Hey, did you hear? I've got a new book out. It's called How to Live a Good Life: Soulful Stories, Surprising Science, and Practical Wisdom. I've been working on this baby for a number of years now. It's the distillation of about 50 plus years now on the planet. The opportunity to sit down with hundreds of astonishing teachers and find patterns, things that really move the needle, and also sharing a single idea, a single model, a lens on life that you'll hear once, you'll remember forever, and it may guide the way that you move into the world from this moment forward and hopefully make a really big difference. We have a really cool pre-order initiative going on where we're working with a foundation to plant trees as well. So when you pre-order your book, you'll get some pretty hardcore, amazing extra bonuses and gifts, and at the same time, you will help us plant what we hope to become a good life forest. We are on a mission to plant 10,000 trees as part of bringing this book to life, and I would love your help. I would be so grateful for it. So if you want to learn more about how to get your copy of the book, or maybe become an ambassador, actually, we have an amazing ambassador experience as well, and also help us plant trees, plant that good life forest. Check out all the details at goodlifeproject.com/book. Or you can just go ahead and click on the link in the show notes now. Thanks so much. I'm Jonathan Fields. On to our show.
If something fails, we learn from that really quickly and we just adapt. So there hasn't been some huge disastrous thing because every day we're trying something new.
Today's guest, Lisa Sugar, launched a website called Pop Sugar back in 2005, and based largely on her kind of obsession with pop culture. And she started it on the side, but what she quickly found was that thing that she was doing on the side blew up. She had just crazy interest in what she was doing, quickly had 1 million readers, and decided to actually jump ship from her mainstream advertising gig and double down, focus all of her energy on growing this thing. 11 years later, sitting here today, I had a chance to sit down with her and talk about her journey. Pop Sugar is now the top lifestyle media brand for women, having verticals with everything from entertainment, fashion, beauty, fitness, and according to her, something like 1.5 billion global monthly content views across all of their different media. And she's built a really powerful company with 500 people as well. I got really fascinated about her as an individual, about the journey, about taking something which was just this sort of fascination and thing that was deeply fun for her, and transforming that into her career, and then building a really sizable company and media empire around it, and how that happened, and also how it changed her along the way. And that's the conversation that we have. She's also the author of a new book called Power Your Happy, which takes you into that journey to a certain extent as well. And we talk about that, and also why, as she sits on top of a very sort of progressive digital media empire, she chose to go and release a book. I think it's an interesting question. So, really excited to share Lisa and her story. I'm Jonathan Fields, and this is Good Life Project. So we're hanging out in Good Life Project HQ, also known as my apartment on the Upper West Side. It's nice just to be hanging and having a conversation with you. You have a really interesting story. And so right now, you and your husband actually are kind of sitting on top of this empire, sort of popular culture empire. And I want to get into that and the journey that got you there. I want to take a big step back, though. You grew up in the Northeast.
Yes.
Washington area?
Yes. Right outside D.C.
Yeah. So in the 80s-ish then.
Yes.
All right. So
best time ever.
Right. And I'm a little bit older than you. That time, like where you were in the 80s, tell me a little bit about your youth. I mean, what was it like?
I loved the 80s, and outside, I got to walk to school from when I was a kindergartner. Everything was, safe and suburban, but I was close enough to a city and, all of sort of politics in DC, which is one of the reasons why I left. But I loved it. I mean, my brother and I played soccer, and we went to summer camp, and, I would stay outside and play capture the flag with all the boys in the neighborhood until sunset.
God, I haven't heard capture the flag for that was the summer thing. Yeah. It was like until you had to come in.
Yeah, no, we were outside all day until, mom came outside and said, or it was sunset. Either, mom was like dinner time, or it was sunset. You come running back into the house, and all the kids in the neighborhood played, and it was so innocent and amazing. I mean, I don't know if that time still exists. You know, there was definitely no computers and iPads and iPods to.
Yeah. Well, but so that's so interesting though, because you're the mom of three girls, I guess now,
three
right?
girls.
Do you try and recreate that at all in sort of the way, or do you think it's just like it's a bygone era?
I try to create it to a certain extent. Like, I live in San Francisco now. It's beautiful out. I feel compelled to get outside every day as much as we can, you know, get to a park, ride a bike. We have a dog that we need to walk.
Yeah.
But my husband and I are also very, you know, into technology. And we grew up, especially him, because he's a coder and he loves, you know, tinkering and he wants our girls to be very tech savvy. So we actually are having sort of that constant debate of our 10-year-old, is she old enough to have a phone or not yet? Because some of her friends have them. And, you know, his whole thing, and I did this with my brother a lot too, was we did play a lot of video games. So even though we were outside a lot, you know, once sort of Nintendo 64 and those, you know, even Commodore.
Everything changed.
Yeah, like we did play a lot of video games. And as long as it wasn't abused, we were allowed to do it. And, you know, I think there was that great balance of being outside so much and still being able to play video games. Now I think it's a little bit more of
right, because they follow you
that
outside also. It's sort of like, you know, wherever you go, it's on you. I think that's the really big challenge.
Yeah. And now, you know, they've gone to the park and literally just asked for my phone for Pokemon Go. And I'm like, but there's like 4 of you. You can go kick a ball or something. And instead they're just like, give me the phone. We want to go play Pokemon. So, you know, I'm fine with them experimenting and figuring out what they want to do as long as they come back to the books at some point or the crafts and the other things. And that right now there's still a nice balance and it's innocent and all that. So we'll see in the next couple of years what happens.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you know, it's the father of a 15-year-old girl now. It's what surprised me and where I don't have an answer right now is that it's it happens really quickly. Is that it becomes a source of social connection too, and like if you're not on your phone, if you're not sort of dialed into the conversation on Snapchat or whatever it is, you're sort of socially outcast.
Right.
And that's the thing that I don't know how. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, put it down, go run around, go do arts and crafts. And I'm a total believer in all of that. Like, get dirty, work with your hands. But there's that social aspect of it, especially for kids that reach their teen years, where you're telling them, you know, like, step out of your social circle when you actually tell them to put down technology. And it's a brutally hard thing to do.
Yeah. I think the harder thing too is me just saying like, put the iPad down. And then she's like, but I'm actually reading a book.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, oh, now I feel bad. I just yelled at you and you're reading, which is lovely. Yeah. Right now for us, Snapchat is just playing with filters on my phone. They're not quite like, they don't have their own accounts on that yet. Yeah. But there are, you know, and just texting. So it's still innocent. I don't quite have to worry about the social, but I know it's coming in the next couple of years. And
yeah, and I think, you know, in the way we were brought up, it's just we don't know what the rules are now.
Yeah, we'll just make them as we go along.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, you know what, we'll do our best and see how it goes.
And hope they end up okay.
Then they will. They'll all end up fine. So you're growing up close to D.C., and like you said, it's a town defined by politics.
Yes.
But clearly from your earlier comment, that was not your thing.
No, definitely not. I mean, I think, you know, it's amazing what people are doing, and I'm extremely happy that we live in a country that, you know, we have the freedom and we're fortunate to be able to have wonderful people protecting us and all that. But when it came to what DC was about, I mean, I grew up, it was like lawyers, doctors, and politicians. And I just knew that wasn't where I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
I eventually came to New York, and that was the next city for me. And I got a lot more alive here.
Yeah. What was the thing that made you come to New York? What was it about it?
Brian, my boyfriend in college, now husband, came here to start building J. Crew's website back in the days before anyone even knew what websites were. So he was up here for a year, almost 2 years when I was still in college. And I would come up here on the weekends. I came up for the summer and I interned, and then eventually, just immediately, so after I graduated, I came up and moved in with him. Yeah.
Was there something in New York particular that also drew you? I mean, I guess because one of the things that you sort of shared is that you've had this lifelong obsession with pop culture.
Yeah.
Take me back to do you remember where that came out of, like when that first started?
Well, I can tell some early stories. Was my dad actually had a case. He is a lawyer. He's still a lawyer in LA for like 15 years. We used to joke that he had another family in Hollywood. Oh
my God, 15 years?
15 years. He would go back and forth to LA for this case. And he took me in 8th grade once with him. I was like old enough to kind of go. And when he worked, I could, and I just loved it so much. And, you know, we had traveled a lot as kids, but every time I'd go to Hollywood, I loved it. So that was like an early sign. I was like, oh, maybe I'll come here for college. This is amazing. But then when it came time for college, I was like, that's actually really far away. I don't want to go that far. So I didn't really get a good taste of it until I did come to New York. So even though I loved pop culture and entertainment and reading and writing, I didn't think I could actually do that for a living. Like to me, that I didn't actually know that there were jobs behind it. Obviously there were, but I didn't think that that was something I could do because I was so surrounded by, lawyers and doctors and politicians. So once I actually got to New York, I had an internship at Fox, actually. That was my sort of first foray into this world. And it was a live morning show with Tom Bergeron. It was so lovely.
Right.
And that was another, big sign where I was just like, that's it. I need to somehow make it into this world. And the other one, which I talk about in the book, was Brian brought home a pilot for Dawson's Creek.
Right.
And J. Crew was dressing them. And he said, you got to watch this show. It's the next 90210. And I was like, totally, let me see. And I just having access to a show that no one had seen yet, that the writing was so clever and the cast was adorable and the clothes were great. I was just like, I'm in. I somehow have to be involved in this. I don't know what this is, but I need to figure out how to get in it.
Yeah, it's amazing to sort of stumble upon something like that where you're just like,
yeah,
I don't know what it is about it, but I'm fascinated. I'm drawn to it. Like, I want to know more.
Yeah, and I think, going back to Dawson's Creek, you have James Van Der Beek character who in high school was obsessed with Spielberg, right? And he knew early on he wanted to create content. And to me, that hadn't clicked earlier.
Yeah. It's so funny that Brian also said it's the next 90210, which was for a lot of people, our audience, probably everybody knows that, but for a young generation, they're like, 90 what?
Yeah. Well, and the other funny thing about 90210 is Darren Star actually grew up in my hometown.
Oh,
and it was supposed to be called Potomac 20854, but no one knows what Potomac is.
Right.
So they changed it to Beverly Hills. That's the rumor.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing the way that we stumble into stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, there's this thing that, and also this was like such a great time to sort of be involved. I mean, the 80s is when so much broke, it's like, big hair, crazy outfits. And I kind of feel like that was when so much of pop culture just kind of really exploded onto the scene and TV changed in a really big way. Darren Star, I think, was probably a big part of that.
Yes. Yeah. It became more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think it's true. So from there, you're kind of hanging out and trying to figure out your next move, but you weren't ready to really dive into this full time.
No.
And at the same time, you're married.
Married at like 22. I mean, I was really young.
Right. And you tell a story in the book. You met Brian. Was your first week? I met him the first week of school.
My roommate went to high school with him. So we went to go meet this guy she went to high school with, just because, that's what you do, right? When you start a new school and you're meeting new people, it's like, who do you know already? So Emily introduced me to Brian, and
love at first sight.
Yeah, I had a boyfriend, he had a girlfriend, but I played him in FIFA soccer and beat him. So, my video game skills helped me out because I had that older brother and I played.
You completely crushed him, like on the first.
No,
meeting.
I think that's how I got noticed. It's like this girl can play.
She's got skills. That's too funny. So you hang out in the industry, and you're living in New York for a chunk of years at that point.
Yeah, for me, it was just a couple years. Brian was up here for like 5.
Right.
And so for us, it was just a couple.
Yeah. But you kind of, you followed this path into the media world.
Yeah.
So from the morning show.
Yes.
You didn't stay there for that long.
No, I was just an intern there. So that was just for the summer. And then when I graduated, I was really eager to get into entertainment. And everyone was just shooting me down. They're like, forget it. You need to be like somebody's little sister or daughter to get in. And I went through a bunch of interviews, and I was making my way into some great places, but then I decided, you know what, I'm going to look at advertising. This seems like an interesting way to get into.
And you're in New York at the time also, so it's sort of like,
so I took a job at Young and Rubicam, which to me was like quintessential Madison Avenue agency, and my accounts were Showtime and Sony, so I was like, I'm close enough to entertainment with these types of accounts. And it was a great first experience. I mean,
what were you actually doing there?
I was doing media planning. So I basically would be given a budget, and we would figure out where to spend the money to reach the target that they wanted to reach. Tell you, so Showtime did a lot of original movies at the time. And, every time we would figure out that movie, who the target was, and we'd buy pages in People Magazine and Entertainment Weekly. And this, again, was all before digital. Yeah. We'd buy outdoor advertising, radio.
So is this fun for you? Because it's really interesting to me, because I've had a number of conversations with people where it's like, you kind of have a sense for this thing that you like. And then, but you're not at a point where you can kind of step directly into like that like the center of that thing. So you start to work on the fringes or as part of the culture.
Yeah.
And sometimes it really satisfies that Jones, but sometimes it completely doesn't. Sometimes it actually even makes it worse.
I really enjoyed it. I was on a team with 4 women who were like really encouraging and really fun. And I had an amazing client at Showtime who I loved, who was just such a pleasure to work with. I mean, it was really too good to be true. I mean, sure, there was parts that sucked, working really late, lots of tight turnarounds, but it taught me a lot about what a first job is all about. And like, you have to work late and, being a client-based business, you're on the beck and call of somebody else. So if they call it 6 at night and they need something turned around by the next day, like you're there.
Right.
So it actually taught me a lot. And, at the end of the day, I liked the people. It was a fun culture. There were a lot of people starting out at the same time. So you felt comfortable asking questions. Like it wasn't like you were the only newbie there. There were new people starting all the time.
Right. Do you think that has changed in terms of there's sort of like an expectation of not having to work that fiercely or deliver that level of service and sort of much faster progression along the path?
When I started, .com had just started also.
Yeah.
So people were leaving the jobs after like 6 months and going and getting a promotion and $5,000 more like overnight. And I think it was scary for the agencies because they were like, wait, we just found these people. We just trained them.
Right.
So I see a sense of that today because there is a lot of, folks that when they do learn something and they're quick and they're good at it, they know that they could try to take that somewhere else. But I do think that if ultimately you find the right place or you're happy, then they will stay and want to continue to grow up and progress where they are. I mean, that's definitely what we want at Pop Sugar because, we have a lot of really great young people. We work fast. We work around the clock.
Right.
And if they're into it and, hopefully by the time we're obviously interviewing, we know that they're going to be into it. Yeah. It's a nice fit and it's a good marriage. And these folks are with us for a long time, which is awesome.
Yeah. How much of that do you think comes from the top down, sort of like the culture that's created and the expectations, about what goes in?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Brian and I work really hard to make sure that we've created a fun company. I mean, people are spending more time with us than they are with their families. We want them to love where they come every day. So we definitely want to make it a place where, we had just as much fun building this company starting 10 years ago with, just a really small group of us. And a lot of them were friends when we started.
Right.
So now we're 500 people. And, my biggest problem is that I don't know everyone. I really wish I knew everyone. It makes me upset that I don't.
Does that freak you out ever?
I mean, it doesn't freak me out. It just makes me sad because I really want to know everyone. These folks are, just as dedicated, hopefully, to Pop Sugar as I am.
Right.
And I want to be able to know everyone's name. And I don't yet. But it's such an amazing experience to be able to build a company and then have all these people on your team with you, cheering for the same goals. So that's awesome.
It is amazing. It's funny. Years ago, I owned a yoga center in New York City, and we were growing really nicely. And it's so weird. To this day, I remember the day that I walked in the front door, and I sort of passed the front desk, and the person behind the desk said, "Oh, you're here for class?"
Oh no!
And I'm like, "Oh my God," And on the one hand, I'm freaked out because I'm like, they don't know who the founder is. But on the other hand, I'm like, but we're growing. And there's a certain ethos and, somebody actually said something, hey,
right.
which is great. They were, well-trained and they wanted to be service-minded. But yeah, it is really interesting when you hit that just tipping point. You're like, it's bigger than me. And it's both amazing and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of fill in the gaps a little bit here because we kind of jumped right into Pop Sugar and I want to come back there. But so you spent a chunk of time in
New York.
Right. Working in Y&R.
Yeah, so I worked at Y&R, and I was actually only there for a year. Right. And then my wonderful client at Showtime actually hired me over to Showtime. So I was like, sweet, this is amazing. I now get to go to the client side, which is another part of the experience, a new way to learn, right? I'm now on the other side getting to see, from the Showtime perspective, what we need from the agency and, how to work on the other angle. And I really loved my boss, and he was super encouraging. He's still there. George, he's amazing. And, he would set me up to present to EVPs when I was, 23. Mm-hmm. So he really wanted to give me an opportunity to grow. And then he also knew deep down, he knew that I did want to get into more of the entertainment side. And I was still doing the same job technically. I was still media planning, but now on the client side. So he knew, he's like, look, let's do this for a little while. And then you're in the family now. Like we'll find another. Yeah. And I loved that. I loved that being in my mind. Like be here for a little bit in this position. You're doing great at it. Grow here, learn here, and then we'll see where it goes.
What an amazing also moment, because he was playing the role not just of your boss, but of your mentor. Like he was actually looking out for your personal growth and not just sort of like, how do I fill a need in company? That doesn't happen a lot. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like that happens the way it sort of used to a generation ago almost.
Yeah, no, he was extremely encouraging, and that was another, great thing for me to take away as we start a company and have our company culture is to, who lifted me up along the way. Like George absolutely believed in me, knew that this wasn't what I wanted to do forever, but said, take this opportunity now and know that we'll figure something out when the time comes. And just knowing that in my head was already encouraging. So
yeah, I mean, what an amazing thing for you to see also. I mean, when you were reflecting on it, you can be like, oh, wow, that was really cool. When you were in the moment, were you aware of sort of like the unusual nature of sort of like his mentoring lens?
I definitely knew he was special. I definitely knew that, this was... There are a lot of people who had horrible bosses. And at this point, yes, a lot of my friends were all starting out there. I've got friends quitting jobs left and right because they've been like verbally abused or, hit on or other horrible things where I'm just like, oh my God, I'm in this really great place that I've not had to deal with any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, especially also, I mean, in media and in advertising, it's in New York City, when you're in that sort of startup, it's not known as a friendly industry.
Yeah, no, it definitely, when I first started, I would say there was that sort of corporate, because Y&R's so big. Yeah. That corporate culture where people were climbing ladders and such. But I just, maybe I was lucky because my team didn't feel that way. And then when I got to Showtime, it just didn't feel corporate besides being in that huge building.
So what made you leave?
We moved to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So it really was just that Brian got an amazing job opportunity. We'd just gotten married. We're like, let's go anywhere and just start over. Like just the two of us were so in love. And we moved across the country to San Francisco. It was 99, .com crazy. People were throwing money in every which way. Yeah. And Brian got an amazing opportunity to launch Kmart, which was Kmart, Martha Stewart, Yahoo. And they did this thing called bluelight.com, like the Kmart special.
Right, yeah, of course.
So we went out there, and then I was totally crushed because I was like, I'm getting so close to,
Right, it's like you're starting to work your way. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm at Showtime. Like, I'm so close to MTV, right? That was like,
because that was the bastion, especially at that time, right? Yeah.
I'm like, how do I just get down the street to MTV? But I moved to San Francisco, and then I was like, forget it. What am I going to do there? I don't want to do anything local because I'm only going to be here for like 3 to 5 years. Right. And I don't want to do technology. So,
right. And it's not LA or New York. So there's
no. Yeah. So I did try to interview at some magazines. Like there was some home design stuff and, nobody would hire me. I had no experience. Right. And yet every agency was throwing ridiculous offers out to me.
Because I had New York. Yeah.
I had great experience, both client and agency side, New York. Trained so I did find an amazing place in San Francisco. So I did the sort of quintessential Madison Avenue agency. When I went to San Francisco, I did the sort of quintessential creative shop, which was Goodby Silverstein and Partners. And I was there for over 5 years. And another really amazing, great place where you have, Jeff and Rich in the office every day and creating a company culture where they're very transparent and they address, the ups and downs of what's happening. And they were in a really great growth time as well. So there were new people starting all the time. And there were a lot of similarities that I had from Y&R days. And I figured, I still had a lot to learn in advertising. So I had to work. I wasn't going to just be like, I had to work. So I knew I wasn't going to be creating content quite yet. The timing was not there. And, there was no opportunities for me.
Was the seed planted in your head, though, by then that you wanted to be creating content? Because I'm especially in that time, even the word content was kind of really not even on the radar.
I know, it's funny. A lot of people say to me, why do you even say that? That's not a word that people use, but that's how we talk about it every day. Well, there was definitely no blogs or anything at that point, online.
Yeah, it started mid 2000, 4 or 5-ish.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I was looking at jobs like magazines, local TV, even agents. I was like, there's a lot of agents. There's a lot of ad agencies. Maybe I could go be an agent or something and help cast for this stuff. Just something that was related to creating video, if it was, or print. But it was really limited in San Francisco and the opportunities were not there for me.
So you end up at Goodby. which also is, has this long-standing reputation
Yeah.
for being different.
Yeah, no, Good Bee it's great still.
Yeah, and for about 5 years,
Yes.
and you start to get the bug.
I just, even after a couple years, as much as I loved the people I was starting to meet, I just wasn't being able to be creative in a way that I felt like I was enjoying myself, because here I was still looking at spreadsheets and Excel charts and dealing with budgets, and a lot of budgets and numbers. And at this point, I did have some really great clients, but Sony and Showtime really were, especially Showtime, like I really felt like I was at least still attached to entertainment in some way, shape, or form. And I wasn't on those types of accounts, so it just wasn't as exciting for me.
So what's the thing that makes you say, huh, it's time?
Yeah, so
It sounds like everything's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely had some not great clients or bosses like over the years where I was just like, why am I doing this? I don't even enjoy, at the end of the day, what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So there were definitely times where I'm like, how much longer am I going to do this? And this is now, 25, 26, 27. And I'm sitting here like, every year I'm reevaluating, why am I still doing this? And eventually I'm like, I know I don't want to do this in my 30s. So like, when am I going to stop? And I just kind of didn't. So I actually had Brian, blogs were starting, and Brian was, helping some friends out, whether it's from a design perspective or setting up a site, building sites, because he loves building. He's an engineer. Those video games paid off. And a good friend, Malik, who was a tech writer, was like, I'm going to start this, this site, GigOhm, and he was just over the house, and he would listen to me talk about, just stuff that I thought was useless information, about this celebrity, that celebrity, this show, all this stuff. And he's like, you got to just start writing. Because he knew that I wanted to write, and I was so excited about what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he's like, just start. And he kind of just put it in my head, like, you're right. I need to just do it. So Brian built Pop Sugar for me and taught me some code, and I set really small goals. I was still working at Good Bee, so it was a matter of like writing something in the morning, writing something at lunch, writing something when I came home. And I was bored when I was at Good Bee, on all my breaks that I could, I would go to all the sites that did exist at the time, or the magazines, and none of them really spoke to me, or they didn't update enough, or, it was just, I felt like I could add something to what was missing out there.
So you just started really doing this in the margins. It's sort of like a little bit like any moment you could get.
Any moment I could, and I became so addicted
to
doing it, because the beauty of online is I could see immediately what people were reacting to, and how many people were coming to the site, and people were commenting, and this community was building so fast. This was well before social media. So, all of a sudden, people were becoming friends in the comments section, and they would talk about what they were doing this weekend. And, it's just so cool to see.
Did it take you by surprise?
Definitely. Because when I first started, I didn't even tell anyone besides Brian and Ohm. Like, nobody knew I was doing this, because I was like,
the secret project.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know what my voice is yet. Let me get myself, even in the pattern of doing this. And my friends, I was like, they're not even going to understand it, because, blogs like just weren't a thing.
Right.
So I kind of kept it to myself. And then it started growing, and I, started telling some friends, and then they were like, it's really good. And they were encouraging me, which was great. So along with this audience of people I didn't know in real life who were starting to leave comments, my friends, and, I actually had a handful that were in PR, and they immediately were just like telling everyone, and because that's by nature what they do. Right. And they were so great at spreading the word about Pop Sugar pretty early on. So then like a lot of movie studios and networks did see it and get access to it. And then I would start getting invited to movies before they were out, so I could review them. And so I got to do that a lot. And, I had some actually really fun experiences early on where I did get to Brokeback Mountain was one of the first movie reviews I did, and King Kong. And I got to go see King Kong in George Lucas's Presidio Theater.
Oh, nice.
It was just like magical.
Right. It's like taking that early sort of CD of Dawson's Creek and just amplifying it,
exactly.
Like 10,000 times. It's like, wow, now I'm in George's private theater.
Most people did not like that movie. You read my review, I loved it.
And it had nothing to do with the whole experience.
It was the whole experience. It really was like.
So you were like in.
Yeah, and then I was like, how many movies can I review? How many, and then one thing just kept leading to another. And
at what point do you say to yourself, because this is a fascination of mine, you have somebody who's a grown-up, who's got a family, and you've got the job, but you know that this thing is growing on the side, and you know that this is the thing that's really lighting you up. I'm always curious, like, at what point do you make the decision to say, okay, it's time, like, I see where this is going, there's a trajectory forming, but I got to give it everything and step away from that main thing.
Yeah. So I started writing in March of 2005, and by November I actually left Goodby because it was starting to get really fast and really big. And Brian, he really had the foresight to say, like, this is awesome, go all in, and let's build this audience as fast as you can. I mean, it was a hockey stick. Like, it was just exploding. And he saw how happy I was from it. And at the same time, we did just find out that I was pregnant. So that was fun. So I really just, he was like, let's just do it. Like, go all in. So even though I was, literally like a month pregnant, I left Goodby at the time. And I went all in for Pop Sugar. And then 6 months later, he left his job and came and joined me. And we had an idea. We knew, let's go beyond celebrity and pop culture. I was writing about a bag here and a couple beauty products here that I loved. Like, I wanted other things. I always envisioned I would write other stuff. But it didn't work in that blog format all in one stream because people were like so excited about all the celebrity content. And then there was like a purse that I wanted. And they were like, what? It was distracting. So we knew we wanted to roll out. And I immediately knew that because I wanted to talk to women in their 20s, that advice was the next. Because I know that, all day long I'm on the phone with my girlfriends, giving each other advice. So we knew we wanted to have, it was at one point Dear Sugar, Ask Sugar, but, a QA just of anything. And so, one of my girlfriends from college came on board, didn't have any money to pay her. She's like, I'm going to do this with you. And,
that's
and that's
awesome.
How it started.
It's like just, you believe in the mission and you and in you.
Yeah. And she had a blast with it and ended up staying on board with us, once we got funded and, for over 5 years. And
how do you figure out what the voice is? Because that's when you're starting something like that. That's not an easy thing.
That was actually the easiest part.
Really?
It was so natural. I mean, it really was just what my thoughts were. And I think what was really important to me was that it was different that was out there. So everything that was out there at the time was very matter of fact. Either like magazine, who, what, where, when, why, done.
Right.
Or mean and like super snarky or really nasty. Yeah. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Like, I love celebrities. They're traveling the world and they're entertaining me nonstop. Like, I want to thank them for that. And like, I was just so happy to be able to know more about where everybody was at any given time because I was starting to, find access to where people were before social media. I knew where they were eating dinner on a Friday and Saturday night. And, but even just seeing, all the news coming in about stuff. And I used to describe it as a puzzle where you'd see the news every day. And then you'd see all these, at the time it was paparazzi pictures, which now are not nearly as important as they were 10 years ago. Right. But I would put the story to the picture because I didn't want to just put pictures up because, that was obviously just really intrusive, but sometimes that works. And that's what the audience wanted. But most of the time I would try to pair it with a story. So whether it was like somebody signing on for a new movie or like ratings from a show that just premiered the night before or somebody announcing a pregnancy or something. So at least there was like context to it. But the whole voice was very conversational, very much your friend who's like in the know, but not a know-it-all. Like, I'm just super excited to share this with you because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to share whatever it was that I learned, and very fan-friendly. I always wanted it to be very friendly for talent and celebrities because I knew as this was going to grow, I wanted to be able to have access to interview them. I envisioned that if we kept this a great place that was friendly, we would work just the same way a People magazine works with talent. Like that's what I was kind of envisioning us with a little more personality.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that the voice side came so easily. And I wonder if sometimes, I mean, obviously it's just an expression of the voice and like in the fun and the energy and I don't want to say it's not, it's respect, but also just kind of like almost like awe of what sort of like a lot of is happening around.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because so many times when people, say we're going to start a media company, there's all this process around what should our voice be, and like there's analysis and data and market research, and
which is great if you're maybe doing print and it costs a lot of money to publish something and then put on a newsstand. But I mean, online you just test and see what the focus group comes back with, and that's the beauty of online and our company too. Everybody's always like, "What's your biggest failure?" And I'm like, we test new shit every day.
Yeah.
And if something fails, like we learn from that really quickly and we just adapt. So there hasn't been some huge disastrous thing because every day we're trying something new.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting because it's a mindset that if you come out of traditional media or even traditional entrepreneurship, people don't get, because like, first you build it in a vacuum, don't tell anyone what you're doing.
Right.
And then like you put it out there and you pray that you got it right.
Yeah.
Rather than just iterate every single thing that you do is an experiment, and it's okay if it doesn't land because you've got data from that.
Right.
Rather than putting massive amounts of energy and money into something and then being crushed when it doesn't work. And it is kind of fun to see that shift in mindset, both in the world of entrepreneurship and in media now. Although I think entrepreneurship has adopted that a lot more. Media, I still think there's a real struggle.
I think it's because it depends on which media and what their revenue stream is.
Right.
If you're still based on subscriptions and newsstand sales, it's very different.
Yeah, and it's harder, and there are bigger risks that you're taking because it costs real money to publish one big episode and like hundreds of thousands of copies of it. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be in this space for sure. At some point, you take funding.
Yes.
Tell me about the decision-making process there.
Yeah, so we had about, I don't know, there were like 8 of us. And, the funny story is, so my girlfriend I was telling you about that came on board without being paid. I also worked so fast that the first thing I wanted to do was hire a copywriter because I'm like not a grammar geek and I spell stuff wrong constantly. And I was like, I need somebody to look at my spelling. So copywriter was one of our first hires. And then, we had engineers, and we hired one of our other, best friends who's one of our founders, and she was in finance, and she came in to be our managing editor, but we didn't know what the job was going to be. And she literally ended up doing, everything from operations to hiring and training and everything. So anyways, we're having our first day, and this best friend, founder who I mentioned, and the other best friend from college who's now writing, and I go to the Madonna concert. And I'm 2 weeks from giving birth to our first daughter. And we go to this concert, and everybody comes to the house the next day for like first official day of training. And there's like 7 of us. And I end up going into labor. So we have to already like start, taking a step back. But I go and I have Katie, and everybody's still at the house doing stuff while Brian and I are at the hospital. And we realized, okay, we should start getting some office space. And at that point, we had met a really amazing young woman who was going to help me start writing Pop Sugar because I knew I was about to have this baby. I needed somebody else to help me write. And we found some office space mid-July. And at that point, we were like, okay, like we know we want to roll out these other site ideas. And what is this going to look like? And how many people are we going to want to hire? And we very quickly were courted by 3 amazing VCs in the area. And at first, Brian didn't want to take money. Brian was like, let's just kind of try to use some of our own from a company he had sold and, keep the team really small and just go all in and work.
Especially if you're growing explosively yourself.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's not an easy decision.
But we found these amazing investors who have been with us. So they ended up investing in September. And we took in $5 million, and we started to just hire and train for each vertical that we knew we wanted. And the goal was to get 6 up by the end of the year, 6 more.
Which is
sites,
massively aggressive.
And was awesome. And we did. We got a handful of sites up and running by the end of the year. And, and everything was just, it was moving so fast, and it was so much fun. And we were just concentrating on building the audience. We weren't even thinking about, building a sales team yet or any of that stuff. It was just like, keep the product awesome, keep the site fast, easy to read, beautiful to look at, and let's get the content up and let's hire, this team. And so we did. We hired, a bunch of people. We were probably like maybe 30, 35 by the end of the year. And we were just off to the races. Really, we were just having so much fun. And over the years, we've taken in additional investment from mostly the same folks, but, we haven't taken in money in over 5 years, unlike our competitors who are just constantly taking in money. And we've been a profitable company for, I think going on 5 years, which is like really awesome for 500 employees and amazing. Being a global company. And, but we have an amazing team bringing in. And we bought, I haven't mentioned this yet, but we bought a company called ShopStyle.
Right.
So ShopStyle we bought in 2007, and it's basically kind of like a Google for fashion. So if you're looking for a black button-down blouse, you type that in, and it gives me, shirts from J. Crew, Nordstrom's, Neiman, Saks, Net-a-Porter, Forever 21. And that became great for us because Brian has a commerce background. And his vision was, I don't want to just be an ad-based business.
Yeah.
And because he saw that early on.
Yeah, I was curious what the decision making was behind that.
He knew, like, for publishing and media, if you're only...
You never know.
Right. And if you are dependent on just the ad industry dollars, that's scary for a media business. So
a lot of businesses learned that in 2008, 2009.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, because we had ShopStyle, we had now, it now has like over, 1,400 retailers. I mean, we work with all these retailers and we send them so much traffic every day that we have amazing partnerships with them. And, we work really closely with them too, because they love our business. So it's this mutual relationship that's amazing that has helped the overall company at certain times. So sometimes the media business is doing better, sometimes the ShopStyle business is doing better, and it's great for us because we're able to invest in different parts of the company at different times, and it's been awesome.
I love that because it's like you're taking this super rapid growth tech-based company, but you're diversifying the way that it generates money in a way where it's almost like you're creating verticals that are sort of like revenue hedges based on assuming that things are going to shift.
Yeah.
And you don't want the rug to get pulled out from under you.
Yeah. And I really think that's like the smartest thing we ever did as a company. Yeah. And Brian saw it and we knew, commerce and content, we always say there is a marriage between that. I mean, even when you're reading a magazine, the whole point of it is to like be inspired to buy a product, but there's such barriers to actually find that product when you're looking at it in paper, right? But online, it's so easy. You just click and go and buy. Yeah. So he actually, loved that our editors were using ShopStyle as a tool, and then we created tools to make it really easy for us to put that on the pages of articles that had shopping and product.
Right. Was that the thing that really convinced you, is that your own people were actually using this as a resource for themselves?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is always, I think, really important. It's like we use the product ourselves.
Right. Yeah, no, it's great. It's an amazing product.
Yeah. So you're building this company and you're doing it with your husband too. And I'm always interested in this because I work with my wife, like we run our company. Was there a moment where you both said, okay, like we're working together, we're doing this, or did it just kind of happen? I'm like, because sometimes, there are these negotiations when I've talked to people, and sometimes it's like, I have this skill set, you have that skill set, and you just kind of start helping each other do stuff.
It's really the latter. Yeah. I mean, we definitely are interested in a lot of the same things and different things. I got asked yesterday what my favorite font is, and I'm just like, I like I could tell you the names of 3 fonts. That is not my expertise. Brian is an amazing eye and designer, and he can talk fonts all day, and I love that about him. I want to think about the stories and what's going to resonate with our audience, and he's not as into necessarily that, and so we definitely balance each other out.
But I mean, it brings up another question of mine, which is when you have 2 people who are partners both in business and life, that it's been my experience. I'm curious whether you have this struggle at all, and with partners who I've talked to also, that especially when it's a business that you're both passionate about, you're both really dig, that it can sometimes be hard to find the off switch for that. And it's sort of like, okay, can we not talk about business anymore?
I talk a lot about work-life blending.
Yeah.
We drop our girls off at school together. We walk into the office. Some days we don't talk. Some days we're talking business. Some days we're talking family. Like some days we're brainstorming new things that we want to build. It really, every day is different. And, there's definitely times where if I had something super stressful and I come home and he wants to talk about it, I'll be like, I'm done. I'm off. Like, we're going to go watch Stranger Things, which
is an awesome show, by the way.
But there's definitely times where we'll be like, I can't do this right now. And then there are other times where it's like, all right, let's figure this out and really get through it. But for the most part, people have asked me that, do you shut off when you're at home? And no, our kids see it all. They see
because when you're an entrepreneur, I think it's about, you can't shut. And that's why it's funny when I read that you're using the word blend also, because it's something I heard for the first time a couple years back from a friend of mine, Mitch Joel, who runs this digital agency. Yeah. And I was like, it makes so much sense because to me, people use the phrase work-life balance all the time. I'm like, there's an underlying assumption there, which is that, like life is good, work is bad. So you have to balance them against each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just don't agree with that underlying assumption.
Yeah. I also, I basically say forget balance. It's
I totally agree with that.
I mean, you also I don't know, life would be boring if it was so balanced. And I can understand people wanting, things to not be so out of whack all the time.
Right.
But I think that's how you grow and learn how to push yourself.
I totally agree. I mean, to me, it's like there's this, because I've heard this, people are like, you aspire to this, there's like a point, or there's sort of like a state of being called balance. I'm like, well, that sounds
That's when you take
mythical.
a yoga class.
Right. It's like your life is a pendulum, and your goal is just to get it to just be straight in the middle and never move. It's like, that's just not reality. Reality is it's swinging all day long in every direction. Your job is probably to have enough mechanisms to figure out when it's swinging out to the extreme and it needs to come back.
Right.
But it's in motion.
Yeah.
It just is.
I've said, from a work-life balance, I know when I've learned to say no, or I know when I need to ask for help. But to me, to your point, it's almost like, finding those times during the day or the week when you do just need that time where you need to get balanced, and like for me, that's like, I'm more of like a soul cycle person. I know people love yoga. I have friends who meditate, and sometimes it's just finding that 5 minutes in the day to balance yourself versus like trying to have an overall work-life balance. I think that's just like not realistic.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in daily practices.
Yeah.
And just sort of like having a daily practice that even if it's just a couple of minutes in the morning or in the evening or whatever it is, that kind of is a place where you can keep going back and just touching stone for a moment.
Yep.
So as we're hanging out here, the thing that brought you to New York is you got a book out.
Yes.
Which makes me really curious because you're going from big, like cutting edge media, completely digital, to old form media, to like published, printed, like hold in your hands book. What was behind this decision?
So I was really excited to write the book because I keep getting asked the same question. And it's basically like, how did you do this? And how do I get a job like yours? And, in my 20s, I was trying to figure out how to get jobs in entertainment or creating content of some sort. And at the same time, a lot of people don't know the story of Pop Sugar. So I wanted to, give that personal, story and show bits and pieces of how we built what we did, which we're really proud of and I'm really excited about, as well as a lot of practical advice. And I think that, anybody who's trying to figure out what it is, whether you're, I say 16, 26, 46, there's people I have friends who are still trying to figure it out, and that's fine. I think it's trying to help you find clues along the way that would make you happy. It's not just career. It's more of, even just maybe finding that time to balance every day, or a hobby that you want to fit more of in your life. So it's not all about making like some drastic career change. And I think, I just was really excited. I feel wiser now that we've been doing this and we've been able to build something, that I'm just really proud and is successful.
I'm curious what the experience was like for you, as I'm an author also, so I'm always curious how people experience, and I've written what would be considered long form online, but like short form compared to a book for years and years. How did you find the difference between sort of like writing regularly or editing now, because you're not doing as much of the writing, versus saying, okay, I need to actually create a full-length thing?
Yeah, no, this was definitely a way different process. For the book, I did a huge outline, which is really how we pitched to the publishers, and just to give them a really good sense. And it was that combination of knowing some personal stories that I could share of how I would let them envision what was going to come to life, as well as things that we know. I mean, we just know our audience wants this career advice. So things that we've known along the way that we think would translate well in a book versus online. Because a lot of people are like, why is this different than anything I'd read on the site?
Right.
And, we'd create, some checklists and questions to ask yourself in each chapter, and really things that will help guide you. And I think that, that's different than how we would have done that online. And when we think about writing a story online, it's so much more about, having it be direct and short and, as well as a really amazing headline and how am I going to catch you on social totally when you're taking a break in your day. And this is long term. So the book really is setting you up and building on each chapter versus just, a quick snippet of like a bit or a piece of something that could be online and live online forever and be found tomorrow.
Did you feel that the book, because I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm totally wrong with this, because you have the capacity to produce long form like video and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been really interesting, either like a series of doc style videos or something like that. Did you dance with that at all also, or was it just immediate like this has to actually be a book? Like that's the form.
To me, it was a book.
Yeah.
Definitely a book. I mean, I think now that the book's out, it's like, oh, we could do this in video.
Sure,
and like, let's bring in like
build stuff around
other people's stories and other workshop stuff where I think we could easily come up with some amazing, Power Your Happy video series.
Right.
But to me, the original was written form.
Yeah. That's totally awesome. So we've been jamming for a little while now, and I have a little bit of inside intel, which is that your social wiring is actually similar to mine, in that like you're really good in a room with a small number of people who you're really good with, but you're also sort of more towards the introverted side of the spectrum. as you now have to be like hanging out and like shopping around and like public and interviewed, how are you with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't consider myself an introvert, but I'm married to an extreme extrovert.
Yeah.
So by default, I've become more introverted.
Right, comparatively.
Yes. But I hate public speaking. I hate like getting up in front of people. I love parties and I love being around people, but I don't like being the center of attention. I mean, for me, Pop Sugar was always about the audience and being able to create great content for them. It was never about me. And I didn't even care about having my own byline. Like I wanted it to be written by Pop Sugar. I didn't want it to actually be associated to me. Right. But I love that I'm pushing myself out. And, I'm definitely making the scales unbalanced by forcing myself to do something new. And just like with writing this site, people are encouraging me to continue to do it. And apparently I'm doing a good job. So I'm trying to continue to keep it up and go at it. And maybe I'll have a new skill set at the end of this. But I like being in the office and working with the team on a day-to-day basis. So while this is great for me now and I'm going to push myself and get out there and do this stuff, I'm just as excited to, get back to the routine of, the awesome brainstorming meetings I'm going to be having, when I get back and thinking about award season around the corner and, holiday and our live gift guide show that we do every year, which gets me really excited. So, but it's been an amazing experience and I'm really thankful that I'm pushing myself to try new things and get in front of people, even if it's not something that I liked doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always curious how people sort of like navigate that. What are you really interested in right now? Or what's fascinating you? What's like seriously calling you that nobody's asked you about?
That's a good question. I'm very interested in how media, the landscape in general is changing. I mean, when I do think of, like I threw out the show Stranger Things, when I think of, how a Netflix or other companies are coming out there and creating content, and is that business model going to work well for them? And what does that mean for us as we create video and have, ideas that we want to create, and where would they get distributed, and all the partners and ways that we could work with people, whether it ends up, maybe being on Snapchat one day versus, a typical network, or I don't know. I think that there's so many different ways that the world is constantly changing. But at the end of the day, I think it all still comes back to really great content. So as long as you have something really awesome that people are going to be into, it doesn't matter where they're consuming it. But I'm just really interested in seeing where and how the landscape is going to change.
Yeah. So you're a bit of a futurist, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I like thinking about the million places we can be consumed in the next, 10 years. Yeah. Because it will be different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the next year, it's amazing how it feels like the rate of acceleration of change is just increasing every day.
Yeah.
Let's come full circle. So the name of this is Good Life Project.
Yes.
So if I offer that term out to you, to live a good life, what does that mean to you?
I think it is to, be really passionate about what you're doing, to surround yourself with people that lift you up and make you feel great. So, in my case, that's obviously my family and the company that we've created and friends, and trying new things. I mean, whether, that means new companies or, new projects, or exploring and traveling and, creating new traditions. That would be the good life.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. We love sharing real, unscripted conversations and ideas that matter. And if you enjoy that too, and if you enjoy what we're up to, I'd be so grateful if you would take just a few seconds and rate and review the podcast. It really helps us get the word out. And you can actually do that now right from the podcast app on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you just click on the reviews tab and take a few seconds and jam over there. And if you haven't yet subscribed while you're there, then make sure you hit the subscribe button while you're at it. And then you'll be sure to never miss out on any of our incredible guests or conversations or riffs. And for those of you, our awesome community who are on other platforms, any love that you might be able to offer sharing our message would just be so appreciated. Until next time, this is Jonathan Fields signing off for Good Life Project.